Nobody told him she was coming. Nobody told the audience. Nobody told the man standing at the podium who had not seen his wife in 11 months. That was the whole point. Nobody in the production booth pressed pause. That would come later, in the editing suite, when the supervising producer watched the raw footage back and realized that Steve Harvey, a man who had been live on television for 14 years, who had never lost his place mid-sentence in front of a camera, not once, not in 14 years of tapings and interviews and surprises and moments that would have derailed a less disciplined man, had stopped speaking on May 22, 2024, at approximately 2:17 in the afternoon, mid-sentence, mid-word, and had stood completely still for 3 full seconds while the sentence he had been saying simply ceased to exist. The word he had stopped on was because. He had been saying, "We're going to head into our final round because," and then the curtain at the back of the stage had moved, and a woman had walked through it, and Steve Harvey had stopped on because and had not finished the sentence, and would not finish it for a very long time. The man at the podium, who had not yet turned around, was named Sergeant First Class Raymond Okafor. He was 39 years old. He was serving his 3rd deployment, this one in a location the military had not authorized him to specify publicly, which is the kind of sentence that tells you everything you need to know about the location. He had been away for 11 months. He had 12 weeks remaining on his deployment when his unit commander had, through a process Raymond did not fully understand and had been told not to ask too many questions about, arranged for him to fly home for 4 days. The Family Feud appearance had been scheduled 3 months earlier by his family, who had not known he was coming. Raymond had been told the morning of his flight he had been given 4 days and a commercial ticket and a connecting flight through Dallas, and a car from the Atlanta airport, and a curtain to walk through at 2:17 in the afternoon. He did not know his wife was on the other side of the curtain. His family knew he was coming. His wife, Serena, 37, did not. Serena Okafor had submitted the Family Feud application in November of the previous year, during the 7th month of Raymond's deployment, on a night when the children were asleep and the house was quiet in the particular way that houses are quiet when the person who usually makes them loud is somewhere else. She had submitted it because her mother-in-law, Adeze, yes, that Adeze, 83 years old, who had been on this stage 4 years earlier in a tangerine dress and had said 3 words that had rearranged something in Steve Harvey, had called her on a Sunday and told her that the family needed something to look forward to. Adeze had said, "Find us something to look forward to." Serena had opened her laptop. She had found the application form. Adeze was here today in a deep gold dress she had sewn herself. A different dress, but the same quality of intention as the tangerine one, because Adeze believed that occasions deserved to be dressed for, and this was an occasion. She was in her wheelchair at the end of the left podium. Emeka was here, 62 now, a little slower, still steady. Gloria was here, 61, still sharp. Chisholm was here, 31. Her daughter Ada was 4 years old and was not at the taping because 4-year-olds and live television are a combination that Emeka had assessed and declined. Tobena was here from Houston, and Serena was at the center of the podium with her hands on the buzzer, in a deep green blouse that she had chosen herself, on a morning when she had stood in front of her closet for longer than usual because she had wanted to look like someone Raymond would recognize across a room. She did not know there would be a room. She had been managing 11 months alone with 2 children, their son Kofi, 9, and their daughter Nana, 6, with the specific and ongoing resourcefulness of a woman who had been a military spouse for 12 years and who knew that the distance was not the hard part, or rather, that the distance was the visible part and the invisible part was the vigilance, the being on at all times, the having no backup for anything. The nighttime sounds in a house that Raymond was not in that required her to assess whether they were the normal sounds of a house settling or something else, and to do that assessment alone every night without the option of waking someone to ask. She was a dental hygienist. She worked 4 days a week. She drove Kofi to soccer and Nana to her Thursday art class, and she managed the mortgage and the car and the grocery rotation and the homework and the bedtimes and the nighttime sounds, and she did all of it with a competence so complete that the people who saw her doing it sometimes forgot to consider what it was costing her. What it was costing her lived in the small hours of the morning, between 2 and 4, when the house was fully asleep and she was sometimes not. In those hours, she had a habit she had not told Raymond about, not because she was hiding it, but because she had not found the way to explain it that wouldn't worry him. And worrying him was something she refused to do, across 11 months and a distance she could not name publicly. The habit was this. She read his letters, not just the recent ones, all of them, from all 3 deployments in order, from the first letter he had written her from his first posting 14 years ago, when his handwriting was slightly less certain than it was now, all the way forward. She kept them in a box. She had read through the entire box, from beginning to present, 4 times since November. She said it was the closest thing to him being in the room. She had not told anyone about the box. This was the lie she permitted herself, not the box's existence, which Kofi had seen and asked about, and she had explained simply, but the reading. The 4 a.m. reading. The going backward through 14 years of his handwriting in the quiet of a house where the responsible thing was to be asleep. She said she was sleeping fine when her mother asked. She was sleeping fine. The hours between 2 and 4 were extra. She used them the way she needed to. The Okafor family played Family Feud with the energy of people who have been looking forward to something and are determined to be fully present in it. Tobena was fast and enthusiastic and definitively wrong on 3 answers, which Adeze met each time with a silence that was louder than comment. Emeka was steady. Gloria was sharp. Chisholm had the particular competitive ferocity of a woman who takes games seriously and does not apologize for it. Adeze, from her wheelchair, hit the buzzer handle twice. The same technique as last time, still technically against the rules, still forgiven immediately by Steve Harvey, who saw her do it and simply said, "Ms. Adeze is back." And the audience, some of whom had seen the original clip, responded with a warmth that Adeze received with the expression of a woman who finds recognition appropriate. Steve Harvey had recognized Adeze the moment the family walked out. He had crossed to her before the taping started and crouched beside her chair and said something quietly to her that the cameras did not catch. And she had said something back to him, and he had laughed. A real one, sudden, the same laugh as before, and had stood up and adjusted his jacket, and the taping had begun. Serena played with everything she had. She was fast and precise, and funny in a way that was unperformed, the same way she was probably funny at home, practically, in the dry way of a person who has been keeping things running for 11 months and has found that humor is one of the more efficient coping mechanisms available. She buzzed in on 4 answers and hit all 4. The audience loved her immediately. Steve Harvey kept finding reasons to come back to her end of the podium because she had the same quality Amara Diallo had had, the same quality Gloria Hendricks had had, of being entirely present in a room, of making the room feel that it was being attended to rather than performed for. Between the second and third rounds, Steve sat with her. He asked how long her husband had been deployed. She said, 11 months. He said, "How do you manage?" She said, "You make a list and you work the list, and you add to the list as things come up, and you cross things off, and you go to sleep, and you wake up, and the list is waiting." Steve said, "Every day." She said, "Every day." He said, "What's on the list today?" She said, without hesitation, "Kofi has soccer at 5:30. Nana needs her Thursday art supplies replenished. I need to call the insurance company about the car. And I need to not cry on television." Steve Harvey laughed, real and sudden, and said, "You're doing well on all four," she said. "The day's not over." The audience laughed. Steve smiled. He said, "What do you miss most?" She looked at him for a moment. She said, "The sound of the house when he's in it." She said, "It sounds different when he's there." She said, "I don't know how to describe it any better than that." He said, "You don't need to." He said, "I think everyone in this room knows exactly what you mean." He looked at her for a moment. He said, "Stay right here." She looked at him. She said, "The round." He said, "It'll keep." He turned and walked to the back of the stage. He spoke briefly to someone in the wings. He turned back to the audience. He turned his microphone toward his side, the old presenter's trick, removing himself from the moment he is about to create. And he said, "I need a moment of your patience." The studio fell completely silent. And then the curtain at the back of the stage moved, and Raymond Okafor walked through it. In his uniform, all of it, every piece, because he was the kind of man who understood that some moments require the full thing, and this was the full thing, and he had known that from the moment they told him in the morning, and he had dressed accordingly. Serena Okafor's back was to the curtain. She was looking at Steve Harvey, who was looking past her, and she saw his face do the thing that faces do when they are looking at something that confirms something, and she understood, before she turned, what she was about to see. Her hands came off the buzzer. She turned. The studio fell completely silent. Raymond crossed the stage. He was not running. Military men do not often run toward good things. They have trained themselves to move toward threats and to slow down for gifts, to approach the best things with the same care they use for the most dangerous ones, because things that matter deserve that care. He walked across the stage the way he had probably walked into difficult situations, steadily, with his full attention committed entirely to the single point in front of him, which was his wife. Serena did not move for 1 second. She stood completely still, which was the same stillness she had used for 11 months, the managed, held, responsible stillness of a woman who has been the stable point for 2 children in a house full of nighttime sounds. And then it broke. Not loudly. Her face simply stopped managing, stopped holding, stopped doing the work that faces do when they are on and responsible and keeping the list going. It became just a face, her face, and she crossed the remaining distance between them, and they met in the center of the stage, and Raymond put his arms around her, and she put her face against his uniform and held on. The studio fell completely silent. Adeze, at the end of the podium, was looking at the ceiling, the same ceiling she had looked at in a hospital room 4 years ago when she held her great-granddaughter for the first time. The same ceiling people look at when they are talking to someone not in the room. Her lips were moving slightly. Emeka had his hand over his heart. Gloria had both her hands over her mouth. Chisum and Tobena were holding each other the way siblings hold each other when something is happening that is too large for individual containment. The opposing family, the Merritt family from Memphis, 4 cousins and their grandmother who had been spectacular all afternoon, had gone completely still. The grandmother, Odessa, 78, had her hand pressed flat on the podium. One of the cousins, a young woman named Priya, 26, was crying without apparent awareness that she was doing so. Steve Harvey had not moved from the spot where he had stopped mid-sentence. He was still there, 3 steps from where he had been standing when the curtain moved. And his face was the face Bernard, the camera operator, had described from a different taping. The face of a man in a church, present in something larger than himself, grateful for the proximity. A camera operator named Denise said later she had been doing this job for 12 years, and she had learned that the most important thing a camera operator can do in a moment like this is choose the right face and stay there. She said she had 3 faces available: Steve, Adeze, Serena, and Raymond, and that she had stayed on Adeze because Adeze's face was doing something she had never seen a face do before. She said, "It was like watching someone receive an answer to a prayer they had stopped expecting to be answered." She said, "I stayed there. I don't think I blinked." Steve Harvey said quietly from where he was standing, not to the audience, not to the camera, to Raymond and Serena in the center of the stage. "She carried this war too." He said it the way he had said the true things before, not as performance, not as narration, as witness, as the naming of something that deserved to be named by someone with enough room in them to hold it. Raymond turned his head, just slightly, toward Steve. He nodded once. The studio fell completely silent again, but Steve wasn't done. He walked to them. He stood beside them, and he faced the audience, and he said, "I want to talk to everyone watching at home." He said, "When we talk about what service costs, we talk about the people who go." He said, "I want to talk about the people who stay." He said, "The person who manages the list every day, who drives to soccer at 5:30 and replenishes the art supplies and calls the insurance company and lies awake at 2 in the morning reading letters in the right order." He said, "Those people are serving too." He said, "They have signed up for something that has no uniform, no rank, no ceremony when it ends." He said, "Serena Okafor has been on deployment for 11 months, and nobody gave her a curtain to walk through." He paused. He said, "I am glad we could give her this one." The studio fell completely silent. Odessa Merritt, 78, raised her hand from across the stage. Steve nodded. She said, "My husband served 31 years. She said, "I kept the house for 31 years. She said, "They gave him a ceremony when he retired." She looked at Serena. She said, "Nobody gave me one." She said, "This is yours." She started clapping, slowly, facing Serena. The audience joined immediately. The Merritt family joined. The Okafor family joined. Adeze, in her deep gold dress, brought her hands together precisely 3 times and then rested them in her lap, which for Adeze was the equivalent of a standing ovation. But Steve wasn't done. During the break, he had spoken to his foundation and to a veterans' family support organization that the show had partnered with twice before. When the cameras returned, he made 2 announcements. The first was that the foundation was establishing a fund specifically for military spouses, not for veterans, for spouses. Because, Steve said, the support infrastructure for service members was real and imperfect and underfunded, and at least it existed. And the infrastructure for the people who kept the houses and the lists and the children was real and imperfect, and more severely underfunded and less acknowledged. And that was going to change in whatever way one foundation and one television show could contribute to changing it. He said the fund would open with $200,000 and would provide emergency financial support, child care assistance, and mental health resources for military spouses during active deployments. The second announcement was simpler. He said Raymond had 4 days. He said the foundation was covering 4 nights in Atlanta, so the family did not have to spend those days driving. He said, 4 days is not enough. He said, it is what we have. He said, let's make it the best 4 days we can. Serena, standing with Raymond's arm around her, looked at Steve Harvey and said, Kofi has soccer at 5:30. Steve said, I know. He said, someone will handle the list today. She laughed. It was the real one, not the dry, efficient laugh she had used in the conversation, but the one underneath it, the one that Raymond probably knew, the one that had been in the house when it sounded right. Raymond looked at her when she laughed. He looked at her the way people look at something they have been missing so specifically that seeing it again is also, slightly, the confirmation that they were right to miss it that much. The Okafor family and the Merritt family played the final round together. Steve's suggestion, quietly made to both families during the break. Not as competitors, but as a single combined pool of answers, the points irrelevant, the board just a reason to stay in the room a little longer. Adeze hit the buzzer with her cane handle one final time. Nobody penalized it. Nobody was going to. The clip went up on a Monday. 38 million views by Wednesday. 71 million by the following Monday, making it the fastest-growing clip in the show's current digital history. A military spouse support forum shared it with the caption, "She said it out loud. Someone finally said it out loud." Within 2 weeks, the Military Spouse Fund had received contributions totaling $1.4 million from 44 states. The original Adeze clip, the one from 4 years ago, the We Kept Going clip, experienced a resurgence of 22 million additional views, as people discovered the connection between the two tapings, between the grandmother in the tangerine dress and the grandmother in the deep gold dress, watching her daughter-in-law receive a curtain. 3 months after the taping, Raymond completed his deployment and came home. He came home to Billings, no, to Atlanta, where the family was, where Serena had made a home in a house that sounded different now. Kofi had grown 1.5 inches. Nana had advanced 3 levels in her Thursday art class and presented Raymond with a portrait she had made of him from memory, which he had framed and hung in the hallway. Raymond had asked Serena, in the first week home, about the box. She had shown him. He had sat at the kitchen table and held the earliest letter, the one with the slightly less certain handwriting, for a long time. He had not said anything. He had put it back carefully, in order, and closed the box. A year after the taping, Serena Okafor was appointed to the advisory board of the Military Spouse Fund. She said in her first meeting that she wanted the fund to be designed by the people who needed it, and not by the people who thought they understood what those people needed, which are different groups, and that the difference matters. The fund director said it was the most useful sentence spoken in the organization's first year. Serena said it was on her list. Adeze, 84, watched both clips again recently, the tangerine dress one and the gold dress one, on the tablet Chisholm had given her for her birthday. She watched them in order. She watched them without speaking. When the second one ended, she set the tablet down and looked at her window for a while. Chisholm asked her what she was thinking. Adeze said, "I said 3 words on that stage 4 years ago." She said, "I did not know what they would start." Chisholm said, "What did they start?" Adeze looked at her. She said, "Look at what they started." She gestured, at the tablet, at the room, at the house, at the great-granddaughter Ada playing in the next room, at the fund, and the curtain, and the husband who came home, and the box of letters in order. She said, "We kept going." She said, "Look at where it went." Some things begin before you know they are beginning. A grandmother says 3 words in a tangerine dress, and 4 years later, her daughter-in-law receives a curtain in a deep gold dress, and 71 million people watch the distance close between a woman who kept the list and a man who walked through the curtain she had always been standing on the other side of. The studio fell silent for both of them. The show stopped mid-word for both of them. And a man with a microphone said the true thing both times, the thing that needed a room large enough to hold it. She carried this war, too. We kept going. Look at where it went. If this reached you, hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second and it matters because this story being seen is exactly the point. Subscribe to this channel so you're here when the next one comes. And share this with every military spouse you know, or anyone who has ever kept the house, kept the list, kept going without a curtain. Today, they've earned the curtain.